Welcome to Voyage of the Geek for another week. This is the 3rd of August 2017. Joining me as always, Dan Miller.
Hello, hello.
Rick Legarto.
Good evening.
Every time I go to say your last name, my mind goes blank.
Oakden. Tony Oakden, the famous Tony
You know what I was going to call you then? Borman.
That's fine, Tony Borman.
Tony Borman.
Borman's the guy who made the movie.
The last time you were on the show, I did exactly the same thing.
Just think of hobbits, Oak, Dan.
Well, the embarrassing thing is I see Tony every day of my life.
You don't normally refer to me as Oakden, though.
No, that's right. And today we're going to be having a look at what the director of the film quoted as saying, "It went from failure to classic without ever passing through success."
That's a beautiful quote.
It's a great quote, and I'm going to hold on to that forever. It's John Borman famously said that recently about a film that he made starring Sean Connery called Zardoz.
1974.
74, now commonly referred to as a cult classic, and definitely going to be a lot of fun having a chat about tonight. But how are we, gentlemen, on this rainy winter eve?
A bit of a cough.
Yeah.
So my voice is a bit more sexy and gravelly than it usually is. So.
That's Tom's microphone, so you can cough all over that one. He's got those German genes. He'll just push right through that, whatever that ilk is. How have you been, sir? How's Bubba keeping you up?
Yep, no, she's good. She's still sleeping the night through. We're very lucky. She's been doing that since she was 4 weeks old. She takes after me, I think. Food and sleep are two of her favourite things.
Yes, Mia was similar. We thought we were blessed as well, but there is a point where all that comes back and haunts you.
Goes in cycles.
Dan, have you been?
Having had 2 children, I can tell you that it's nature's way of lulling you into a false sense of security. Absolutely. You do have a second one, and then you regret it instantly. Oh, now this is going live, isn't it? My son will see this one. He's a lovely child. I love him very much now.
There's some creative editing after the show.
There.
Dan, have you been, sir?
Not too bad, not too bad. Pretty busy, pretty crazy, pretty wet, pretty rainy.
And you have the enviable task of having to watch this film multiple times to get some narrative beats and notes and things in preparation.
Now we're going to have to put this into context.
Yes.
I think in the chat earlier on today, and this is what I was saying to Dave before, I think it was Rick who said, no, it was Tony. It was Tony. So we were saying, are we all ready to go with the podcast? And your quote was, "Yes, I watched Zardoz all the way through." And I was sort of contrasting that with, like, Wonder Woman or something. You wouldn't go to the theatre and say, "Did you see Wonder Woman, Tony?"
Yeah.
And then you'd respond,
I even finished it.
I watched it all the way through. You wouldn't say that. You'd just say, "Yeah, I went and saw Wonder Woman. It was awesome."
And I take full responsibility for this film. This was my suggestion.
And you should. And there will be penance.
There will be
must be penance as a result of it. But I have to say that I found enough between the lines of it as a historical document of where we've been in cinema, I guess, to find it interesting.
Yeah.
I found, and we spoke about that yesterday, that there's something compelling there. It might not be in the normal places you would find it, but there's some interest there.
I might save my opinions till the end, but I will give you the shape of my opinions. They started at one point, then they got quite different, and then they ended up back at the same point that they started at. So that's kind of how the and that refers to the fact that I have to watch it 3 times.
Who would like to give us a synopsis sort of a one or elevator pitch, I guess, of what this film was all about.
If we're going to go through it and discuss all of the beats and the parts and bits and pieces of the story, I was thinking that perhaps going through it slowly, revealing the story one step at a time, might not be the way to approach this movie, because logical things don't make sense when talking about this movie. So yeah, it might need a synopsis at the start. It might need an introduction of who the characters are and some of the people and the...
Well, it's set in 2232.
Right.
Yep.
In the far future.
Yep.
There is Zardoz. He's a bunch of what they call exterminators.
No,
Well, Zardoz
Zed.
is the...
Zed.
Oh, Zed.
Zed's one of
Zed is
the
one of the
exterminators
exterminators.
that religiously
Follow the god Zardoz.
follow the god Zardoz, which is a big floating head.
And their job is to kill the brutals.
The Brutals.
Yeah.
Well,
Which,
their job originally was to kill the brutals. Then they get a bit pissed off because they're turned into farmers.
Yes, that's
That's when the trouble starts, I think.
and that's the reveal towards the end.
Do you want the IMDb blurb?
Yep.
In the distant future, a savage trained only to kill finds a way into the community of bored immortals that alone preserves humanity's achievements. So it sounds very sophisticated, doesn't it?
It does.
Sounds like quite a handy proposal for a film, potentially.
Well, there is
And it is true.
yeah. I mean, in terms of story, there is actually quite a nice little story there
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah. it's just wrapped up in weirdness. But I agree with Tony. I think there's a story.
If I could, do you want me to summarise the
Yeah,
story?
go.
Okay, so people in the future, they've retreated into this enclave after some sort of apocalyptic event, and they've made themselves immortal by creating some sort of intelligence which monitors them, and then because they don't trust their judgment, they've removed their memory of how this thing was created and how to destroy it. And after that, they discover that they're getting really bored and they actually don't want to live anymore. But this thing won't let them die, and the only way they can die is to create a mutant species out in the wasteland, who will then come in and destroy them without this thing knowing that they're doing it.
Yeah.
So there's this kind of subplot there, and Sean Connery plays this guy called Zed,
Zed.
who they refer to him as a beast. But the interesting thing is, of course, he's actually highly intelligent, as is revealed in the end, and he's basically playing them because he wants to find out what they're doing. And in the end, he doesn't actually want to destroy them, I think. So there's a kind of interesting little weave of story there, and some, hidden machinations which are going on there.
And you can see a nice... it's a good sci-fi,
it's not a bad thing, this idea of
It's
people
the
in
execution.
the future. Yeah, the execution is very model.
Yeah, the narrative plot points are great.
Yeah.
It's the bit in between that
Yeah,
joins
absolutely.
them.
Or doesn't join them
Yeah.
together.
My opinion, my global opinion about the film is that this is what you get when you scope too high and your budget is too low. Because it was $1 million budget,
Right.
and 200,000 of it went to Sean Connery.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Right, they're in Ireland, so they would have had to ship a bunch of people out to Ireland and put them up as well. So that it starts to eat your dollars away. If you scope too big, you can't shoot $1 million film that has visual effects and special effects and all sorts of lighting effects and mirrors and holograms and things like that without doing some bizarre stuff. And that's what you're left with.
I felt like it was a Doctor Who. I thought it would work well it would not be out of place as a Doctor Who episode from 1974.
Absolutely.
Chopped up into 6 episodes and made into a little TV series.
They would just need to wind back the nipple.
Yeah, maybe a little.
Way too much nipple.
There's
There's a
quite
lot of nipple.
Did notice that the women in the future are quite lithe and don't wear bras.
They don't really need to. A lot of them really have the chest of a 12-year-old boy.
Well, so do the boys.
Yeah,
Actually.
you're right. You're right. Sean Connery really stood out in that crowd.
He was in
Ex-bodybuilder and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So where should we start then, Dan? How should we handle this one?
Well, look, I was thinking about it, and I think the way that we need to proceed is kind of how we've been proceeding, where we can jump around because the movie does that.
Yep.
And we probably need to explain things because you get surprised by things, and there's all this sort of freak out stuff that happens, long episodes of freak out stuff. So we might do that. If we start with the opening narrative, okay, so the movie starts, and this is where I want to sort of maybe start the discussion. The opening narrative, what's your opinions of the opening
The
narrative?
floating head with the guy with the towel over his head,
Yes, the guy with the dishcloth on his head, and he has one other surprising feature.
painted on mustache and weird liney goatee. There's an extra feature that is behind the scenes. It was the studio that made him put it in.
Made him put that start bit in.
Yeah.
Why?
Because the audience needed to understand what was going on.
No,
They felt-
fail.
the studio needed a device to help the audience understand what was going on, which was in the trivia notes.
Well,
And
that helped how?
well,
Because he doesn't explain anything.
well, the only other what it says in the trivia notes is the opening sequence. Now, I don't know whether that's floaty head guy or it's the Zardoz landing.
It's gotta
I can't
be-
imagine
no.
he would have started the film without Zardoz landing and the guns and everything.
Yeah.
So I think it's the floaty head guy.
It's a floaty head guy. It's got two
So
floaty heads in
to
the
me,
movie.
it's right up there with studio cocking up a movie as bad as Blade Runner voiceover, where they made
It's
they
not
made him
really,
put
is
the
it? 'Cause
voiceover.
Blade Runner was a good film.
Yeah, but
There's a slight difference.
it was the studio that it was the studio that made them do a voiceover like it was a 1940s
Noir.
private dick, private eye
Yeah.
investigation thing, which he never really wanted to do.
I thought it was. Yeah. Anyway, let's not talk about Blade Runner.
So
Makes
we've
me
got this
sad.
guy with a dishcloth on his head and a painted on mustache
Yeah.
who comes in and gives us some sort of Shakespearean poetry.
He's a god by definition
Oh, look, I've got it
and a
here.
magician by
inclination.
inclination.
And and the other thing that sort of freaked me out, apart from that tone, right, that they set that weird tone, and it's sort of satirical. He says it's satirical.
Yeah.
He says that the movie contains, it hasn't happened yet,
Yeah.
and it contains characters that he's manipulating.
Yeah.
And then he's talking directly to the audience, and then he asks if the audience are also being manipulated
Yeah.
by characters and other gods make.
And perhaps God is an entertainer. Is his last phrase.
Yeah, and perhaps gods from Hollywood as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you count walls, but he's definitely broken the fourth wall, and he's hammering on whatever the fifth wall is.
Yeah.
He's also knocking that down.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you got this really. So that's your first impression, and you're like, okay,
Well, you half expect John Cleese or someone
Yes.
from Monty Python to pop up.
yes. And then what happens?
And then we're in the wastelands, which in this film was filmed just outside the back door of Mr. Borman's house in Ireland.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, some kind of green rolling hills of Killarney or something like that. I don't know.
So it's a horrible wasteland, and there's a big floaty head that's
Yes.
flying through the sky.
Yes.
And it's big, and it's like stark. It's like
Glowing eyes.
the glowing eyes. It's a definition of stark. So first for me, that contrast between dish towel guy with the, and then we
Yeah,
go
yeah.
straight to boom.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
And it could have almost been a scene out of Conan,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something medieval like that.
So we've got a bunch of guys, and they're running around on the hills, and they're all worshipping this head.
Well, let's describe what the guys are. What is their garb? What is their what's their shtick?
Yes. Well, they so there's
Red
still
speedos with
budgie smugglers.
with suspenders.
It doesn't matter which end you start from. You can
Yes.
start from the head down or the toes up.
Yeah, it's equally
Weirdness.
weird.
You'll get to weirdness
Boots.
eventually. Well, they got
Thigh-length
thigh-high,
boots. Thigh-high boots.
hooker boots.
Yeah.
They've got a loincloth / budgie smugglers, bright red, and bandoliers. What are they called? Bandoliers.
Yep.
Yeah. Bullet belts, matching colour. So everything's
Yep.
red.
Yep.
The whole thing's red. But yet they're on horse. A lot of them are on horseback, and they've got white clay type masks that emulate
Yeah,
Zardoz,
face
the floating
forward
head.
and backwards.
With the-
Face forward
with the-
and
with the
backwards.
So I'm
forward
sure
head,
there's
yeah.
some significance for
Yeah.
that. Well, at least in the director's head, there was some significance as to why they had to be facing forward and backwards.
Yes. So, and they're all worshipping the flying head.
Yes.
All right.
And then the flying head speaks.
The flying head lands, and then the flying head speaks. And this is, if you're going to have quotes, does IMDb have the? This is a quote because there's only one quote.
Zardoz speaks to you.
So anyway, what does Zardoz say? Zardoz apparently has some philosophical thoughts to impart to us, the audience, and the people.
That the gun is good. Now, up until this point, I could put up with the floaty head guy.
I
right?
like the floaty head. Well, not the dish towel
No,
floaty head.
well, even the dish towel guy, right?
Okay.
I could put up with him. And then the fact that we flashed to some point in time that I wasn't really sure when and where we were or all that. And then there's the floaty head thing, and the visual effects weren't too bad. And
They weren't too bad.
Yeah.
The guys on the horses and the landscape looked pretty good. And I'm thinking, okay. Zardoz talks. The voice sounds pretty good. Says the gun is good. Ah, hello. Okay, violence at the heart of the belief system. And the penis is bad is the very next line. And then I'm left scratching my head, instantly scratching my head, thinking, okay, well, where the hell does this go now?
Yeah. So we've started with dish towel, satirical Shakespeare, flying head, and then we've gone straight to
He's
the
got
penis. Penis is bad.
You have been raised up from brutality to kill the brutals who multiply and are legion. To this end, Zardoz, your god, gave you the gift of the gun. The gun is good.
All right. So
And the penis is evil.
and the penis is evil. Yeah.
It's almost like the foundation of the United States. Really.
No, but that doesn't work. The gun is good works, but
Yeah.
then what do you do with the penis is evil bit? You can't keep anybody happy with this situation.
That's exactly right. In fact, they've got a big penis in charge at the moment.
All right. So and then the head proceeds to vomit guns
Yes, and shells.
and shells. Yes.
In return for grain and tribute.
Yes.
Not at first.
We'll kind of find out that later. I think it's fair for this movie to jump ahead and backwards and forwards and explain
Yeah, we
things
might have to.
because there's no other way.
Yeah.
You can't survive without. So yes, they swap grain and potatoes, I do believe.
Later on.
Yes.
Of course,
So-
it's Ireland.
So interesting.
Oh, exactly.
At this
I never
point-
thought of that.
Sean Connery breaks the fourth wall as well by shooting the audience.
In
Yeah,
the
true.
in the
That's how
opening
this
couple
section
of shots.
finishes,
Yeah.
which I think
Yeah.
I don't know whether that signifies something. I mean, clearly this is an early stage where they've just been given the guns, and then what happens? Presumably they go off and do all this killing, and the next time we see him in the head, and then we through flashbacks we find out that there's been this other stuff that's gone on over a period of years,
Yeah.
presumably in between,
Yeah.
where they've been turned into farmers, and they've been starting to bring their grain on board the head,
Yeah.
and he smuggled himself onto the head, and that's how he got him.
If there has been sort of a change in time, and this is a bit of a theme when they're sort of presenting the story to you as the audience, you get no sense that there's a change in time. All you get the sense really, well, this is what I got,
Yeah.
was just
No,
freak
no.
out. It's
Yeah.
just something freaky, something else freaky.
Yeah.
You'd have been very forgiven for thinking that the next sequence followed on immediately from that sequence when you're watching it, until you actually watch the rest of the movie, and then through
Yeah.
flashbacks you understand that there was quite a lot that happened between those two times.
When Sean Connery points the gun at the thing, it's a revolver. You can see
That's right.
clear blue daylight through the...
Yeah, at the back. It's a very unique gun. That particular gun is a semi-automatic revolver.
I saw him
cocks
sort of-
itself when you
Yeah,
fire.
Yeah.
I read it in the notes. It's called a Gweebly Veebly or some weird name. But the whole front of the gun, you pull like this, and it cocks it the first time. But then every time you fire it, it actually, the recoil recocks it. So it's a semi-automatic.
Okay.
Giant condoms behind the building.
Never made that connection, but that's a good one too. That works. That really works.
So he basically jumps onto Zardoz and conceals himself in a pile of grain.
At some stage, there might have been a 100-year gap in
Yeah.
between there. We don't know.
3 years.
Okay. So the next shot, we go freak out montage.
We see the gun rise up out of the grain. Now
Right.
that is a Borman signature thing.
I've not seen
He
many-
made Excalibur, and Excalibur with the sword, but he also made.
Deliverance.
Did he make Deliverance?
He made Deliverance, and there's a scene in that with a double-barrel shotgun that comes out of the water as well. It's his signature piece. It's
Okay.
it's his go-to shtick
That's
as
cool.
a director. Yeah. So that's the relevance of
How did the
gun
same man
first.
make this and Deliverance? Deliverance is a good film.
Did he make it before or after?
That's
It
not
is.
all. Like the
it must have been
cinematographer
afterwards.
of
Deliverance
this
must have
made
been after.
Superman, and there's a bunch of stuff that the
Yeah.
cinematographer went on to do as well.
I can see a lot of Stanley Kubrick kind of
yes, there
wannabe
is,
going
yeah,
on
there
in
is,
here.
yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
discount
Was it
Stanley
long after
Kubrick.
2001, was it this? Must have been similar.
Actually,
sort of-
2001. The cinematographer was
Yeah.
the cinematographer
Oh, was-
on 2001. Although working under Kubrick, I can't imagine the cinematographer would have been doing a lot.
No.
But he
Well,
was the cinematographer
actually,
for
it's
2001.
An interesting thing. One of the good things that this movie did for me I did see it when I was a young man.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't my first exposure to this film. I love the music. Yeah, and it's Beethoven's the second movement of Beethoven's Seventh,
Oh, is it really?
which is probably one of the most hauntingly beautiful symphony movements that Beethoven wrote. And it got me into Beethoven, and then I went out and listened to a lot of his other symphonies and most of his sonatas. And so this movie actually, and a lot of other people, they also they were introduced to Beethoven's music through this movie. And Kubrick's, of course, did something similar with 2001, where he used
And Clockwork Orange.
a lot of Johann Strauss's waltzes for the, and again that introduced me to waltzes there. So yeah, there were definitely similarities.
All right, so he comes out of the wheat, so he's stowing away on the head, in the head, right?
Yeah. And we
In the
don't know
big
why,
flying head.
but he's there.
Now, there are people inside plastic bags inside the
why?
head.
I don't know why that.
Why?
I have no idea.
Ziplocs.
Why? Because freak out. I think freak out is the reason for...
There's a lot.
My assumption was that they were powering it in some way. They were the
Okay,
force
that's a good thought.
But I got
yeah.
no reason for assuming that at all, other than that it seemed like the only possible explanation as to why they were in there.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they were vacuum wrapped.
No.
And why they were mostly naked.
Yeah, yeah.
The cinematographer, by the way, is Jeffrey Unsworth, who did 2001, Superman 1 and 2, Cabaret, Return of the Pink Panther, Murder on the Orient Express. He's a prolific
Some good
from
movies there,
from say 1980 all the way back to starting around 42.
Oh, wow.
I thought the cling wrapped people, were part of Zardoz's breeding program. You know how
Could
he
be.
bred the mutants,
Oh, yeah.
and he bred that super, like he was breeding on
He
purpose.
breeds the exterminators, doesn't
so
he?
there were people who were bringing back.
In hindsight, I thought that's probably why he had those people. Is that he's part of his breeding program?
Oh, possibly.
Could be.
I like Tony's idea that they're like the psychic batteries that fly the big flying head.
No, I think it could be the
But
breeding.
it could be the breeding as well. Which
Because there
explains
certainly
the
weren't any-
naked for some reason.
there certainly
but
weren't any women
everybody
around.
seems to be naked in this movie.
With the exterminators.
No, there weren't any female exterminators.
No.
I also noticed that a lot of the people exterminated seemed to be wearing suits.
Yeah, it was a bit
That was a
ordinary,
bit
wasn't it? 300 years in
All
the
right.
future and everyone's walking around in tweed.
And I'll build on top of that. Those people are the brutals.
That's right.
Why? Now, this movie is going to do this repeatedly. Why do you call them the brutals? They're not brutal. It's a brute.
Yeah.
They're actually just dirty, boring people. Dirty, poor people. You know what? Anyway, so many layers of confusingness is just sort of stacked into this. So anyway, all right.
But I
So
think the reason they were called the Buddhas is because of what do we call these people? The people who are inside the
Internal,
The
eternal.
Eternals. Yeah, the Eternals had to, because they when after the apocalypse they couldn't help them, so they had to create this sort of barrier. But they had to harden their hearts, and to do that, I think they just
and let the unwashed masses die. So
and then just sort of
they're the brutish, unwashed.
The only way they could
masses.
handle that guilt was to sort of just refer to them as the brutals and just
Dehumanize them.
dehumanize them.
There's
Exactly,
5 identifiable groups. One is the Brutals, the Eternals, the Renegades, the Apathetics,
yeah,
and the Exterminators.
yeah.
I'm sort of complaining.
There's a couple there that I'm not sure who the...
No, that's all correct. The couple, I'm just sort of Anyway, Brutals doesn't. Brutal seems active, right? They're very passive people. So anyway, it doesn't sort of describe it for me. But anyway, yes, those are all the people, and we will meet all of those people. There's one other person on the flying Zardoz head, and that is, of course, Arthur Dishtowel.
That's right. Yep.
AKA Zardoz.
AKA Zardoz.
Yep.
And Zed shoots him and he falls out the mouth.
Yeah.
And then he kind of floats.
He
But he
sort of
floats.
floats, doesn't he? Like he's
Yeah.
like a zero gravity
It's
or
like-
something.
Is he floating?
He certainly wasn't falling.
Or is he falling? I wasn't really.
I think he was falling when they did the flashback, when they tapped into his memory and tried to work out what had happened to him.
I think it's the idea that how parachutists look like they're floating
Yeah, doing a bit of free
free fall.
fall.
I often think with these things that, you know, the director and the best boy have this discussion about how cool some of the backstory is, and then they take a few shots back and they shoot a few other things, and then they realise that they've only got 4 shots, but they've got 4 million pages of backstory that they've never really explained to anybody, and they're just going to click it all together.
There's quite a few parts of this movie where you feel like
Exactly.
you've just taken a chapter out of the thing and thrown it away, or there's a novel and you decided the script didn't warrant that, but I still have to mention this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then you find out there's no novel.
Or other stuff that they just smoked the joint and
Yeah.
thought it was good.
Yeah.
Push all of that together and you've got your answer. So the giant head goes and lands in a little village in Ireland somewhere.
Yeah.
And
In the Eternal Enclave, where the Eternals live.
What was the name they had for it?
they had the wrong name for it, as usual for this friggin' movie, and you can't remember it. They called it a vortex.
Yeah,
That's right.
that's it. It wasn't
That's
a
right.
vortex.
It was not a vortex.
No.
It was a small village.
There's no vortex there.
Yeah.
The small village protected by a force field.
Yeah.
Vortex is a swirly thing.
That's right.
I know this.
Yes,
And
everybody knows
it was
this.
one of many though, wasn't it? Wasn't
Yeah.
it?
There were other
Yes, there were lots of them. The Vortex 4, Vortex 5,
That's
Vortex
right.
9.
That's right.
All right, so the head lands in this thing, and he goes out and he walks through the flour mill. There's a flour mill,
Yep.
and he's in the village and nobody's there. Right, and it's empty. It's kind of deserted. Then he goes into one of the houses, one of the buildings, and there's a sweet hydro setup that's happening in there.
Yep.
They're growing some sort of marijuana or something or other in big plastic bubbles with tubes coming out of it because it's space and in the future. And this is where we start to get this weird contrast where it's like the future, but it's a little quaint
Yeah.
Irish village with tubes and giant condoms on the roof.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Like they've kept the tech for 300 years, but added 1 or 2 balloons and
yeah,
there's a
space-
couple of
space
shiny square things on the roof.
I didn't mind that. I quite like that juxtaposition
mind
of
it?
old
Did
and new. Yeah.
Okay.
And I thought it made sense because none of them would have known how to build.
I was
Yeah.
shocked, like when I saw the heads floating around, right? So there's a head flying around. Up until now, we've just seen some wasteland type scenario, and then it starts to go down in for a landing, and then the very next thing is a big wide establishing shot of the head parked behind some English house,
Yeah, yeah.
it's
down in the corner of the screen.
and it just looks like a perfectly normal house that someone's climbed up and put some alfoil on the roof and a couple of squares, and then that's it.
I was so thinking Doctor Who when I saw that. I
Yeah.
was just like, that's Doctor Who.
All the weird stuff in the film, and you're worried about an auto parking head.
You know me, mate. Stickler for the small things, the details.
So he goes into a house, which turns out to be Arthur Dishcloth's house. He's got this weird freak out bedroom.
Arthur Frayne.
Yeah, Frayne is his name. And he's got this weird freak out thing with all this kind of semi-quasi-religious stuff and all of this sort of shrines. He's even got a shrine to Zardoz set up for some reason.
Yeah.
Because freak out.
It looks like a puppet show, like a kid's puppet show.
That's true. Yeah, that's
Could
true.
be his staging rehearsal area.
There was a rather cool shot that I liked. Did you see the human progression on the wall?
Yes, with a big question mark at the end of it.
So what was the progression? Do the progression? So it was kind of monkey thing, then caveman-y thing, then human-y thing,
Yeah.
then
Homo sapiens.
dishcloth,
Then dishcloth head, and then
question mark. Then it didn't stop there
Oh, didn't it?
because there was the skeleton in the shot,
there
and
was
that
too.
formed the last piece of
Was too.
the puzzle.
Very smart.
So I thought that was pretty good. And anyway, so Zed is our exterminator hero.
He finds a ring.
He finds a ring. And what is this ring?
It's equivalent to, say, a Star Trek tricorder.
In
You
other
can-
words, not as good as a regular mobile phone.
No. You can ask it questions, and it will give you the facts and project information onto surfaces and things like that. Which I thought technically, as a visual effect, worked quite well.
I thought
Yeah,
it did
was
too.
alright.
Yeah. He's sort of swinging it around, and the light from it is projecting onto his head, and we know that it wasn't coming from the ring, so someone was timing that with a projector off to the side, and there was
And
quite
yeah,
a lot
I was
of
wondering how they did
projection.
And I thought in
stuff going on.
hindsight that they foreshadowed his telekinetic powers and his superior brain with the eye, the
Oh,
third
yes.
eye on
Yes.
the forehead. I thought this bit of four.
So he was shining the ring on his own face. And,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah.
They love playing with light in the thing. They do lots of this.
Yep.
Yeah, later on. All right, so he has the computer ring. All right. Now, can we just jump ahead to the story a little bit, because this ring kind of is also another foreshadowing of something that they don't tell you about until the very end, and then they surprise it on you, which is the tabernacle.
Yeah.
All right, so 2/3 of the movie, we don't hear anything about the tabernacle, but then it turns out that the tabernacle is the most bloody important thing
It's at the
in
centre
the whole
of everything.
yeah, and nobody ever talks about it. And then you're suddenly surprised at the end, like, where did this come from?
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so what I've what I've described next is okay. Then then the Oompa Loompas return home. So all of the other dishcloth wearing Oompa Loompas,
Oompa Loompas or Munchkin.
Munchkins, Woompa, yes, Munchkins perhaps, return home. So what happens next is that Zed kind of sees those guys, and then he runs off into the forest, right? Now he also sees that there's some Oompa Loompa Eternals hanging around in trees. Why were they hanging around in trees?
I never understood that. And were they still alive, or were they impaled on the trees?
I think they were the apathetics.
Yeah, I think they were
Some
the
of the apathetics
apathetics.
ended up in the
I
trees.
don't
Someone
think so.
imposed them up there
You don't
as
think so?
flowers, didn't they?
No. Again, another thing never explained. So Zardoz is walking along, and then he sees people all standing in the trees doing nothing.
Yeah.
Later on,
I have to admit though, that's another example of a many in this film where. Have you ever woke up at 4 in the morning and Rage is on television?
yeah.
On a Saturday morning, you've accidentally fallen asleep and someone's left the ABC on, and Rage, and the stuff that they play on Rage at 3 or 4 in the morning, that's this film.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
and,
like, or Eat Carpet.
those shots in this film where there's no reason at all. It's like a music video stuff. It's
fodder, it's music video.
Fodder for music video.
What I think is later on they say is that the Eternals can't sleep because reasons, and instead they meditate.
Oh, you think they're meditating?
So they're all standing in trees meditating because freak out? I don't know. Nobody knows. All right, so he goes down to the lake, the loch, and what happens down there? We meet our first Oompa Loompa character.
Yeah, who's very confusingly reflected in the water. I was thinking, is he seeing her reflected, or is he?
I think that was
Seems
supposed to
to-
be the special effect for
Yeah.
the vortex.
That's right. I think she's in his brain because doesn't he shoot her? And it-
Tries to, and she
that's
overpowers him
right.
with her mind.
Does one of those-
So this chick turns up while he's
Blind
down
quad.
on the thing, right?
Yeah.
So he's like an exterminator, so he tries to shoot her.
Yep.
But yeah, she has, as it turns out, mega psychic powers, and she puts a stop to all of that, and he can't kill her.
Yep.
Which is basically what happened. The problem for me here is that they don't telegraph this very well. You were trying to describe it. You were thinking, is there a... Because they start doing this kind of... they're trying to do a psychic power thing. But they kind of... He's like, pulls out the gun, and then there's like... Whoa, 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 whoa. And then there's a montage, and then close up of a face, and a whooshing, face. And then you're like, okay. And then they start talking again. And you're like, what was all that? What just happened?
Yeah.
A lot of times in the movie, they don't telegraph those things. You know, if I was doing it again, you know, I'd have the gun knocked out of his hand, and then she'd be looking at the gun, and he'd look at her, and then he'd go pick up the gun, and she'd look at the gun, and the gun would move, and he'd chase it. And then slowly you train the audience to realize that she has psychic powers and she's in control. Because this has a big effect, for me anyway, when watching the movie later on. Because after this event, Zed, the exterminator, just turns into like a little purse puppy who just like
does.
walking around. Boop, 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 boop. And you're like, what? Why? Just shoot these people. Just. So anyway.
Yep.
All right. So they have a bit of a discussion here, and I've written down that they have a bit of a discussion. So what do they talk about? They talk about.
We're talking about the girl and Zed, or the two girls, and Zed was on the bed.
Where they got him on the bench.
I can't remember.
Because
how-
No, we haven't got there yet.
She's like the scientist.
No, we
isn't
haven't
she?
quite got there. We're still at the lake.
Okay.
Zardoz, you know, Zed thinks that when people die, they go to the vortex.
Oh, he does say that. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
This chick, what are we going to call this chick?
Well, she's a scientist. I can give you a name.
Yeah, she's essentially a scientist, right?
She's May.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's,
May, the scientist, wants to know how Zed got into the vortex.
Yeah.
All right. So she wants to know, and she's asking him a bunch of questions, and so that's when we hit the next story beat, and this is where we go from minor freak out to kind of major freak out. The story beat here I've called "This Is Your Brain on Drugs." So it starts with a quick montage of Zed killing people on the beach, and then we realise that we're in the Sistine Chapel of Freak Out, right? Which is just this kind of weird room with people.
I think it's May's lab sort of thing, isn't it? It's where she does a lot of. She's the doctor, yeah. She's like the.
Yeah.
She wants to study.
And it's what's going on in his mind is projected on the.
Yeah.
That's right.
But he's not letting them see everything.
He got him on the table and they're discussing stuff. Yeah. So they're essentially doing a brain scan, right? And what we learn is that Zardoz is making them grow wheat. There's another chick there who... Do you know what her name is?
Consuelo.
Consuela, Consuela. Played by Charlotte Rampling.
Yeah. That was you thinking. Yeah.
And what does she want?
Death.
She wants him destroyed.
She wants him destroyed. Why does she want him destroyed?
She sees him as a threat.
Yeah.
She sees him a threat, exactly, because he's like upsetting the balance. They're all nice and organised here, and all of that, the other chick May wants to find out about him and sort of psychoanalyze him and do all that sort of stuff.
And do they vote at this point? Like, does the
No, that's
little mini
later in the
society
film.
somehow 3 weeks comes into it, where they've given May 3 weeks to study him.
Yep. That comes out, but there's so many of these kind of freak out scenes that go on that it's a bit hard to place them all together. All right, so Arthur Dishcloth has gone missing as well.
Yes,
and they want to know
where he is.
They want to know what happened to him. Right. And they kind of find out that he's dead. We find out.
Yep.
And he's being reconstructed
in the Matrix over there.
In the Matrix of the Sistine Chapel.
That's the first time they mention the tabernacle.
Yes.
Do they mention it?
They do, yeah.
Because they say the tabernacle has taken care of it.
Yes.
Right.
He's been reborn in the tabernacle, or
that's when you see him in his little Ziploc bag as a baby,
as an embryo, or as a.
I kind of really wish they'd highlight these things, because a lot of this stuff just flies straight past, and only after watching it multiple times you get some idea of what's going on. So, so we kind of finished that little crazy session, and then it goes into another one.
Yeah.
That's exactly the same as the first one.
There's lots of people in that one.
Now,
there's lots of people.
Yeah, it's a public display of what's in his mind for the rest of the community.
And this is where we meet Friend.
This is where we meet Friend, yes.
Played by John Alderton.
Who I like to call Discount Eric Idle.
John Alderton had quite a
prolific career.
Prolifically in British television.
British television. Yeah. Was he? He was like a famous doctor. Sitcom doctor.
He played a character called there was a sitcom on ITV, which we didn't watch at the time because we didn't watch ITV because that was the commercial channel. We only watched the BBC.
Of course.
And he played a character called a teacher in a series called Yes Sir.
That's right.
And he was the young student teacher in a classroom trying to manage these rowdy teenagers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who
Not to be confused with Mind Your Language.
Oh yeah, was that an Australian thing, was it?
No, that was an English
teacher
trying to teach you. Probably the most racist show on television history. Well, that and Love Thy Neighbour.
Yeah, and are you being served? Of course. And
but he
very
famous John Alderton though on British television.
Yeah, he did a lot of drama and comedy.
Yep.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
I mean, he held his own on in the film.
Yeah.
Without him, this film would have been practically unwatchable.
I thought Charlotte Rampling was alright in it.
Oh, she was good. The May was annoying, but Charlotte Rampling.
May was annoying. I called that other chick just boring. She's just this boring, grumpy woman who was just grumpy all the damn time.
Who became really hostile and angry later on. She just wanted to smash everything up and. She was, and even had a torch. Like even had.
Yeah, no, I don't-
she was just missing a pitchfork.
I don't know where that came from.
Kill the beast, kill the
Are they-
beast,
are these
destroy
people
everything. She
who-
was setting fire to everything.
Yeah, they were setting fire to what? I don't understand what was going on there. Why would they suddenly set fire to all
I
their
think it was
houses?
explained. I think there was a throwaway comment in there that they have lost their innocence or something. Something happened as a result of Sean Connery's character being there. Something happened, and that's what it facilitated them all to go nuts and crazy. And I think it was when he. No, it happened before that. I was going to say when he woke up the who the daydreamers again?
I don't know.
The apathetics.
Apathetics. Remember he woke them up
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they were drinking his life juice or whatever, and they all.
His sweat juice.
But the other mob went nuts before that.
Yeah, before that. What made them go nuts? Is it because he refused to be exterminated?
That's right. And they took out Friend. Like
Oh,
they took
that's
out Friend.
right, yeah,
He
because
ran off.
What happened was there was something with him and May, wasn't there?
Yeah.
She ended up underneath
that's
that
right.
blanket.
She came in
Yeah.
and discovered them.
Yeah, and she thought they were you know,
That's right.
but they weren't.
Yeah.
They were just having some sort of deep, meaningful
Mhm,
philosophical
mhm.
discussion underneath the blanket.
The, yeah.
And that's what triggered the whole. Maybe it was jealousy because
I think it was jealousy.
Consuelo obviously fancied him.
Yeah.
And he obviously fancied Consuelo, and she thought she'd been.
As we discover in the end.
Yes.
Yeah, but I don't remember why they ended up under the blanket now.
Well, she was already under the blanket of truth.
Yeah, that's
She
right.
was,
Yeah, he'd been to see the old dudes, didn't he? The senile dudes,
Yeah.
and then he went back to her.
Yeah.
And
She
she
wanted
was
to
just
get more
chilling.
out of him.
She was just chilling under a blanket.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
up until then, he had been blocking out a lot of the
Yeah.
attempts to get into his brain.
That's right, and that's when she found out about the book. That's
That's
the whole
right.
sequence with the book.
The whole
wasn't it?
sequence
Yeah.
with the book.
And he
And
said, "I've lost my innocence," and she
Yeah.
found out it was because he learnt to read. And
so let's we've brought it up. The book.
Okay.
How pivotal is this book? How much of a turning point? How did you feel when the book was revealed to you?
So let's reveal the thing first. Is Zardoz is
Short for
the Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz.
Wizard
We get
of
Zardoz.
Oz.
And mainly because it's the same story as Wizard of Oz in that there's this real little wee guy behind a big mask machine with a big booming voice that is ruling a whole bunch of weaker people pretending to be a god.
So if you put it into context, Arthur Dishtowel
Yes.
said, to himself,
He was
I
the
have
wizard.
to, manipulate all of these people genetically so that we can repopulate the Earth or something or other. And, I've got a genius idea. I'm going to pretend to be the Wizard of Oz.
That's right.
And make a giant floating head. And
Which he
make
tells you
everybody-
in the first minute of the movie
Yeah.
that he's a magician.
Yes, that's what he says. And a god, and he says all of those type of things.
Yes. A
interesting,
pretend
he's the one who
god.
tips Zed off that he is the Wizard of Oz, though,
Mm.
because there's no way Zed would have worked it out unless he told him that he was the Wizard of Oz. So he
He
gives him
teaches
the,
Zed to
he
read.
teaches
and,
him and he shows
yeah.
him the book, and he
Yeah.
leads him down that.
I got the
road.
impression, though, that Zed then just went and read the whole damn library.
I think he read the library first and then got to the book that he was holding up last. Like that was out of sequence.
And then it twigged in his
because
brain.
he got cranky and started ripping pages out, and because he realised
Yeah, he'd been
that his
manipulated.
life
It
was,
was all-
just
And not only his
Charade.
life, but his father's life.
Yeah.
Because there'd been generations under Zardoz.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
Yeah.
and what they'd become as a result of what Zardoz was telling them to do.
So continuing on with our story, if we can leap back a little bit, they finish this little sequence, and this is where they do the psychic vote, and they want to kill him, but they want to they want to study him, so they give him 3 weeks. He's got 3 weeks to live, so they're going to study him for 3 weeks, and then that's over. Then the next sequence they go is that I've got here is life as an Oompa Loompa. And this is one of the first sequences where discount Eric Idle takes Zed out of his cage or whatever, and then starts harassing him with his psychic powers.
Yeah.
And it's like, why couldn't you have put that in earlier so
Yeah.
that everybody knew who's boss in this, who's wearing the loincloth in this relationship?
And so Sean Connery's character, or Zed, becomes a pack horse
Yes.
to help friend Budget Eric Idle to deliver green bread because of sci-fi
Because space freak out.
This is the future.
to all of the people within the community, including we get introduced to the apathetics.
Yes. So who are the apathetics? Describe. So they're going on a bread run, essentially. They're taking bread to,
Yeah.
I don't know, there's lots of little villages in the vortex.
There's
something.
there's the old people who,
maybe going
who
down
have
the-
been punished over time, and in this world, punishment comes in the form of adding age.
Because you can't be killed, you can't die.
You can just be made old.
So they make
and
you just
decrepit.
lame and old.
The apathetics are that way because
The Eternals, it's like a disease, and he mentions it spreading from vortex to
Yeah, that's right.
vortex, and that more and more people are becoming apathetics, where they're just basically catatonic, really.
yeah.
They're just
And
bored.
that's- Yeah,
Yeah.
bored to death. Except they can't die.
Yes.
And what's one of the reasons Zardoz starts getting the people to make grain is because they no longer have enough workers to
That's
create
right.
Yeah.
food, because they still have to feed the apathetics, but
Yeah.
the apathetics don't actually work.
That's right. And so that's why he's doing the bread run, and he's like chucking bread at him and stuff. While he's down in the village throwing bread around,
Can I
one
just,
of...
at this moment, point out that it is the future, and they have incredibly complicated machines that can fly, and yet they can only make
a rickshaw.
a rickshaw, and they can't make their own. They can't grow grain.
And even
without
the bread
help.
comes out of some special
Yeah.
tubing
Yes,
machine.
yes. So they're
It's a
pounding
bit
the
of a-
dough.
bit
of a-
And they're
They've got a big mill grinding the bread.
yeah,
and I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
And then it's like Scotty with the, you know...
telepathic powers. and-
yeah,
it's-
this-
there was a bit of a plot hole there.
Yeah.
There's strange things. All right, so while they're down there feeding the apathetics, there's another sort of a plot story going on in the background. There's always about 1 million of these, and that's one of the other Eternals is getting in a bit of trouble with his friends.
yeah,
that's
that's-
George the Critic,
Right.
right? And you know, he's been having wrong thoughts. Because they're all psychic, they're all like in tune with his, and he's trying to defend himself. And he's saying, he says here, "I was imperfectly repaired," and that's why he's not thinking correctly.
Oh, that's a lie.
Yeah, that's a lie.
It knows that everyone can see straight into
Yeah,
his brain.
yeah. And he says, "No. Actually, I hate all of you bastards."
He says that next time, doesn't he?
Yeah.
At the end of the first one, he's still
He's still trying to defend
closes
himself.
it, and she looks at the screen, and the character Maze looks at her, he's lying.
Yeah.
And he does point out that he was providing constructive criticism.
yeah, that's right. He's trying to.
A bit like you.
Yeah, a bit like
A
me.
bit like me in class.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of. Was it psychic violence? Was he guilty of? That was a crime, wasn't it? Psychic violence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did bring someone to tears this afternoon, so maybe that was me.
It's both of us in 1 week.
Oh,
We're on a roll.
that's,
It's just shop
keep
of horrors.
Keep pushing the envelope, guys. Keep pushing the envelope. We're gonna have 3 students in tears by next week.
Yeah.
All right, so they sentence him to get extra 5 years of age or something or other, and so he's going to become one of the renegades. We meet the renegades, which are just all the old people. We meet the apathetics, which are just all of the bored people. And then the next section we're going to have to discuss, possibly in some rigid detail, and I've entitled it "Red Pill or the Little Blue Pill."
It's the wrong film, Dan.
And if anyone's feeling a bit confused or sort of, has the what the fuck going on in their head, now you know exactly what it feels like to watch this film.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In
That's
fact,
the
we're
same-
saving you a whole lot of confusion.
We probably make more sense.
So there's another quick sequence where they're going to go for another scientific freak out, which is, becoming a bit of a theme. So they get everybody in the room. They get good old Zed to be under some sort of hypnotic spell.
That's right.
And then the boring woman is going to give us a bit of a lecture about...
About why we should kill him, and at the heart of it all is erections.
Yes.
Ah, that's
because...
She includes motion graphics in her presentation and everything.
She does, in fact, yes.
Is this a sexual part?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
she
where she
tries to
wants
state
get a
her
boner,
case.
she can't.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's because the
But then we
current...
go-
the current patch...
That's
The
right.
current patch of Eternals,
Yeah.
the male ones, they're a bit limp and floppy.
That's it.
In
'Cause
that
they don't even have
department.
children anymore, and they lost their requirement for procreation.
And they can't understand what sort of stimulus
Yeah.
causes erections.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they test, and it starts out with a woman in a shower.
Yes,
No good.
no good.
Couple of girls
Mud
having a bit of a wrestle in the
Yes.
mud.
It's an interesting choice, wasn't it?
Wasn't it? No good.
No good.
And then we find that the only thing that seems to be doing the job is the woman giving the presentation.
Consuelo, yeah.
Yes, and that's where the conflict, I think, starts. I think the real conflict with her, that connection which causes the jealousy later on, starts in that.
And I think this also foreshadows Zed's mind over matter powers that he has. He can control everything, including his own.
Well, a man that can control his own penis really is pretty psycho.
That's, yeah,
And deserves to be
on a
worshipped.
new level.
It's Sean Connery.
Yeah, 007.
All right, so once we get through that scene, what happens next? We go.
I don't know, because I was so amazed at this long scene where they discuss
There
erections.
were some very
and-
long scenes in this movie.
And the
Yeah.
mystery of the erection and the way she speaks about it.
That was one of the things. Sorry.
Yeah. That I think I missed the next 5 minutes because I was just thinking that I just watch 15 minutes of people discussing erection.
Yeah. Yep.
The problem is that the very next scene, we go into another Sistine Chapel science freakout show, which is exactly the same as the other one we did and the one we did before and the other one.
Yeah.
And Tony, you can't remember. I had to write it down. This is where what actually happens is that there's another shot of the horses and the killing with the horses on the beach, and then a narrator comes in, which turns out to be the tabernacle talking in the Sistine Chapel of Science, and then they're talking about interrogating Zed. And then they start talking about how he's a superior genetic human.
They show his genetic makeup, which looks like plankton, basically.
Yeah, and then they want to keep him. You know, they sort of reinforce that they're going to keep him alive for only 3 weeks, and then he's going. So they do another one of these freaking psychic freak out things again. And then we go into the next one, which I've entitled "Brains for Lunch."
Oh yeah.
All right, so
I think what the director was trying to do here, through flashbacks, he was trying to fill us in as to how Zed ended up in the head. But those flashbacks are just so muddled and so difficult to comprehend. And it's just the same shots. There's slightly different shots each time.
You're right.
But unfortunately, you never really get a sense of any sort of progression. If you're going to do back flashbacks, I think you've got to be pretty careful how you do the flashbacks. Otherwise, it just becomes this muddled mess, and it does indeed become just a muddled mess.
Yeah. And the library thing.
I think that's what the director was trying. It's a clever.
I couldn't fit the
mechanism.
library into the timeline. Like, I wasn't sure when that happened.
The library happened, I think, shortly before. Well, it was over a period of months. He must have learned to read, and then that was when he must have told his mates, and they all decided they'd find out what this was all about. What
To
shit
hide
was
him
actually going.
in the grain.
They all cooperate. I know we see that they all cooperate because when he gets out, he goes up to the edge of the force field.
They're waiting for him.
Yeah, and signals to them. So obviously there was a fairly.
Well, they covered him with the grain
Yeah.
in the head.
The next scene I've called "Brains for Lunch," and that's where they're all sitting around having lunch, all the Eternals,
Being served by Zed,
being served by Zed.
which is a problem for Consuela. She's not happy with that.
Yeah, she's still annoyed and she wants to basically kill Zed.
Yep.
Right? But discount Eric Idle, he just loses his shit.
Yeah.
Right? So what happens is a character that we've never heard of and don't know the name of and have never been introduced suddenly explains to us that Zed is the chosen one. The freaking chosen one. Turns up in every damn movie. He's the chosen one, and everybody has to meditate on how friggin' awesome he is and how cool.
Level 2.
Level 2.
Level 1 wasn't good enough. They had to go to level 2.
Level
That's right,
2.
where they meditate as a hive mind.
Yeah.
That's when Friend blows
With
his shit.
jazz
He's
hands.
like,
That's
He doesn't
right.
want to go to
Yeah.
level
Gotta have
2.
jazz hands.
Yeah.
So they're doing all that. And
Well,
just,
Eric Idle, didn't want to be part of level
Yeah,
2.
yeah.
So they decided to destroy his
Yes,
brain.
so they just
They took level 2 and focused it solely on Eric Idle's brain.
They jazz hand.
He got
And he was
jazz-handed.
just a
Jazz
drooling
hands,
mess
yeah.
laying on the table.
That's what happens if 20 people point their jazz hands at you.
It's deadly, man. It's deadly.
Well, they voted. Didn't they start voting first? And they did this.
Yeah, they did one of one of their random.
And I thought there was
votes.
yay or nay, but it's not.
Vote,
It looked like they all had their own
Personal.
personal yay or
And then there
nay.
was no actual conclusion to that.
No, they were going to give him another 7
Oh,
days to
7
live.
And then they,
Seven,
no,
so-
they were gonna, then they meditated in level 2.
Did you notice anything strange about the I shouldn't preface my sentence with this film, should I?
Wow.
The extras. I was watching this movie and I remember thinking to myself, there's something about the extras in this film. Yes, it's a weird film, but normally extras are wannabe actors, you know, and they sort of understand how to take direction and know what to do. It's not easy to stand in the background and not draw attention, but yet not look like a wallflower. You know, you got to have a purpose. I read in the trivia notes they're all tourists. They were touring Ireland, and the reason Borman is it Borman?
Yeah, Borman.
Borman put them in the film is that they look
cheap.
like outside people. They look like people that enjoyed being outside a lot.
What?
Because they're tourists, right? You're out walking around a lot, right? So that's his logic. All of the extras, right,
Yeah, okay.
are tourists. They're quite literally American and Aussies and whatever that were in Ireland on tour.
Wow.
He was pulling them off a bus. Now, obviously, you don't have to pay them either.
That's almost as good as I met a taxi driver in Brisbane who had been an extra in Spartacus. In fact, he was the first one to die.
The original Spartacus or the TV show?
The original one.
Holy shit.
He had been in a refugee camp in, I forgot what Italian island, and the producers with Kurt Douglas rocked in and said, "Who wants to be in a film?" And get a bit of, you know, a token amount of money, and they used to get picked up in the morning and taken.
He would have been crazy old.
Yeah, he was a cab driver, and he'd been a young man.
That's awesome.
And he'd bumped into Kirk Douglas years later.
Yeah.
And said, "Do you remember me?" And obviously Kirk Douglas looked at him and said, "I died for you."
That's awesome.
Because he was the first guy to die in the big battle.
Oh, yeah,
apparently.
yeah.
So there you
That's
go.
cool.
Tangent.
All right then. So Zed then has a bit of a freak out and he runs off into the bush and he runs up into the hills.
Yeah.
Where he goes up to the
plastic barrier.
the psychic force field.
Yeah.
The
So-
memorial Marcel Marceau.
Moment.
Yes, where he does his own.
For some reason, he felt that the need to squash his face on it. You know, like you get this, but the fact that he squashed his whole face on it was.
I was
I
going
don't
to
know.
bring that up as well. So let's just imagine that you're feeling something that's invisible as a force field. You put one hand on, you put the other hand on, and then you decide to squash your face and cheek and nose up against it.
Like a solution might present
Force
itself.
field confirmed.
Not until the nose squashes up
Yeah.
against your cheek.
I
and
need
it's,
3 points of
now-
reference here.
Now it's a force field.
Because there might be a hole between the two hands. You
That's
know?
right. That's right.
Got to, be thorough.
Yes, but
All
he
right.
sees his mates. Doesn't
Yeah,
he?
right. And he starts doing
up on the hill of.
He
in the
starts
distance.
voguing to
That's
his
right.
mates.
He's got his own hand signals.
So yeah, there's something going on there,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I don't know. Maybe they've worked this out beforehand, you know, and so they've been waiting for the signal.
But he's frustrated because the shield's still up and they can't ride in.
There's a bit of a plot hole. Did the shield come down when they all went a bit nuts? Were they creating
I
the
think
force
when he
field?
destroyed the tabernacle, the shield must have come down.
Okay.
It's like with anything in sci-fi. If you destroy the screen,
Yeah,
the internet gets blown up.
yeah.
So
yeah, as we
that's-
saw in Flash Gordon
and all those other movies.
yes, yeah,
Okay, so the next story point is old farts.
that's right.
So, discount Eric Idle has been condemned to be an old blithering idiot now, and
But why did only half his face?
Yeah, I saw that as
get
well.
done? Because everyone else.
They
is
aged half of his face.
Yeah, did the.
Is that because he
batteries
was lying
run
on the
out halfway
ground?
through?
He was lying on his face when they were spirit hands at him. Were they aging him when they were doing this?
Maybe.
for some reason,
Tony, do you know?
Tony knows.
Yeah.
I thought he was supposed to look as if he'd had a stroke. That's what I thought. I thought, he was supposed to look as if.
But I mean, half of his hair was grey hair, and half of it
Yeah,
wasn't grey hair.
he had a lot of wrinkles and everything on one side. I thought he had half aged on one side of his
Maybe.
melon.
Okay, so another thing that doesn't make any sense. So they talk to Discount Eric Idle, and what does Discount Eric Idle want?
Death.
He wants to die, and he wants the whole human race to die as well, because he figures that's probably the best course of action.
And that's where we're introduced to this notion that the one thing that eludes them is death, and that immortality is causing the decay and the probably the.
It's not all that it's cracked up to be.
No,
is what
and maybe
they're
the apathetics is got something to do with that.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, the apathetics are just bored.
Yeah.
Just like,
Yeah.
got nothing else to do.
Yeah.
So he says to the rest of the old farts, who he refers to as the old farts, that Zed is mortal.
Yes.
And so what do they immediately want to do?
Breed.
Kill him.
Oh.
No, it's a worthy guess, because either could have been true in this movie. Either could have been true.
Yeah.
They want to kill him. Why? We don't know.
But do they want to kill him, or do they want him to kill them?
No, they want to kill him.
That's right. They do too.
Because he's immortal. I don't know. They wanted to prove it.
Yeah. So he got jumped by about 20
old people. So they run around the thing for wasting all of our time until he picks up a crutch and says, "Rah!"
That's right.
And
Stop.
then
So they stop.
And then they stop. And then he goes back to talking to Discount Eric Idle again.
Does he talk to the old boy that's lying in the bed yet? Is that in that sequence? Who we find out is the creator of the tech?
Yes. So again, I wonder, why do we have to have the old
we
people?
didn't.
We
We
don't
didn't
need
need
all
that.
of that. We can just talk with Eric and then go on. Yeah. So then we go and talk with one of the old guys, and he's the one who's the inventor of immortality. And we also find out that those old people are the first generation, and the current Eternals are their kids, and that's the kind of progression.
Well, the old people are the scientists who made the technology which supports what they're doing. Built the tabernacle, basically.
Then how come they all got old though? Like,
Well,
wouldn't
they couldn't hack it. Basically, they couldn't cope with immortality, and they went mad. It was only
I thought that they ultimately got punished
By
by
the kids.
By their kids.
That's what I thought too. But they would have
I'm
been punished.
guessing.
But they would have been punished for something,
Yeah,
and it
the
would have been
question
the
was,
activity that Tony's talking about, and they punished them for it
Probably.
because they got bored and they did silly things and whatever.
All right, so they're talking about the tabernacle, and then we go into
So Zed realizes that the key to everything
yep.
is the tabernacle.
Right.
At that point.
And I've got a question here.
Mm-hmm.
How come none of the Eternals are like teenagers, or like why do they all get sort of in their 20s and 30s and 40s? Why didn't they remain as they were? Can you choose when to stop aging?
I think with this film, Rick, questions like that
Had no place.
You can, no, you can answer them in however you want, and you'll be right.
I suspect you're right.
Because I've been turning to Tony, and when I see confusion on Tony's eyes, I know that there is no answer to the question you've just asked.
So then we go for yet another. We go for another memory freak out, and this is where we find out the tale about Zed losing his innocence and finding the Wizard of Oz.
So once he finds out about the tabernacle, he goes back and finds May underneath the blanket of truth.
Yes.
The robe of truth, and
he sticks his head under there as well.
That's right.
And upsets the apple cart.
And they find out about the stuff.
The tabernacle and what has to go on.
Yeah.
And anyway, then there's a bit of a fight, right, which we've already discussed, which is between May and the boring woman.
Yep.
And the end result of that is what?
The Eternals go on a bloody rampage to try find.
That's what the Eternals kind of want to start killing. They want to become kind of killers, but they make Zed blind.
Ah, that's right.
That's right. Yes.
That's right.
They make him blind because
May sort of rescues him.
Yeah.
May sort of reckons, but he's kind of fighting back at this stage, right? So the boring woman, they're having this sort of psychic duel, but it's not working like it was before, and Zed's kind of getting the upper hand somehow. And then now this is very important. This is very important for our discussion because he goes blind.
Yes.
And they say he's blind. And he walks around banging into things because he's blind. What is the very next scene?
He's inside the greenhouse.
Very good.
With May.
It's not May.
It's not May.
Oh, no, it's not May. It's the singer.
It's the unnamed wise woman who we've
Wise
never
woman.
met and
Who
never been
sings.
introduced before.
But she sings all the time.
Yes, she sings all the time.
Isn't she the one who says that he's the chosen one?
Yes.
Yes, she's the one who thinks he's the chosen one.
And he must repay her kindness later on by killing her.
That's right.
That's right, yeah. So,
And she slips him a leaf that he's
Then
going
gives
to
him a-
know when he needs
A
it.
leaf like Frodo's given a leaf
Mm.
to chew on in Mordor.
Right.
To restore him. And I think it also happens in Harry Potter as well. Somebody gets a leaf at some point which they can chew on to get that.
You always have to choose some good leaf.
so they're in the hydroponics thing where they're growing their sweet
And he
leaf.
gets attacked by everyone.
Okay, no, we've got to go very slowly here. We must go very, very slowly.
Okay.
Do you remember how we said he was blind?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, he's not anymore.
No, that's what she was fixing in the
Yeah,
hydroponics.
and that's
thing.
why he's holding onto the branches and leaning
Yeah.
onto the branches of this tree.
She's doing something to alleviate his blindness.
You're making that up.
No, it's true.
You're making that up.
No, it's true.
Did
You
watch-
reckon that he?
I remember
she was,
thinking you got rid of your blindness quickly, right?
Yeah.
But that was what she was
I
doing.
think she rubbed stuff in his eye.
I think so too. I think she rubbed the leafy thing that she gave him to hold on to. She had one of those and she was smushing it in his eyes. Something like that.
Okay, I don't believe you.
Did you watch the film, Dan?
Yeah.
Maybe I went blind at about this stage in the movie, and I'm like, oh my god.
When I don't know, maybe there's a bit still to come, but it's quite important. There's a sequence where they show somebody, one with their forehead slit open, dropping a crystal in there.
Yeah, that comes up a little bit later.
Does it come a little bit
Yeah,
later?
yeah.
Okay.
All right. So anyway, I didn't pick up that she was curing his blindness. And again, you think about the writing. They made him blind, and then the next scene they cure his
Yeah, that was
blindness.
much more
And the blindness didn't do anything to.
And the
for
blindness
for the story.
didn't do a damn thing. And this is going to come up later again. I'm going to
In
bring
fact,
this
it
up later
caused
again.
problems because he's blind, yet he escaped May and Consuela.
Yeah.
So wouldn't he have been better to not be blind to be able to escape? So by making him blind for no reason at all, they actually made their life harder.
Yeah,
In the
yeah.
story
I'm
to get him
ass-
into the greenhouse.
I'm assuming there's a whole bunch of scenes on the cutting floor
Yes.
between those two scenes.
I don't know if they even made it the cutting floor. They're
The
swirling
cutting
around in
floor.
Borman's head, and he's like, "Yeah, man, I got this all worked out. I got this all worked
it's
out."
all going to come
Yeah.
together.
They're
It's gonna
written-
come together.
They're written
BT,
on the back of
film
a
that
napkin
tree.
somewhere.
Take a picture of
You
that,
there,
that
the
water.
pink shirt, the green shirt, the blue shirt.
You
Go and
put
stand
on
in
the
that
green
tree.
Yeah, I got it.
And for the next 2 days, call me Gary. But then he gets jumped in the greenhouse, right?
Right, now this is where we're going to go slowly. This is, yes, you're right.
Right. And then everyone says, it's okay, he won't break out. And then he breaks out through the plastic.
Because they crushed the Ziploc bag around him, and
What
which
the
is supposed
fuck
to
is
trap
going
him.
on?
And then he's able to punch through the Ziploc bag.
That's
So
right.
hang on, we just need to rewind. We're just going to fill in this perfectly. He's in a plastic hydroponics bubble with a wise woman
Yes.
who cures his blindness and gives him a magic leaf.
Yes.
And then a bunch of people outside the plastic bag want to kill him
Through the bag
through the bag
that can't be broken.
that can't be broken,
Then he breaks it.
and then he
And he
breaks it.
escapes.
And what happened to the wise woman? Why isn't she in there trapped with
She,
him?
for all we know, she's still. No, we do know she gets wasted later on. But yes, she may have been there for hours, trapped in the bag. But is now crushed on the ground.
Yes.
Or maybe osmosis, because there's more Eternals on the outside of the plastic. Just like osmosis, she has to join with.
But we never really know who she is, do we, or what she's all about? Doesn't get explained, does it?
All right then. So Zed busts out of the bag, and then he goes off on a run.
Yep. And he's now chased
He's chased.
by the villagers with pitchforks and
Yes,
torches.
and they're all on horses, and
And I
they're
suppose it's
chasing
supposed to show that they have now become the brutals.
Yeah.
They
Perhaps.
become like the people that they,
Yeah.
are supposed to be above.
Yeah.
But how or why they became like that? It's still
I think they
unclear to me.
blindly led by Consuela, who was just a jealous mole who got her nose bent out of joint because she found him under the blanket of truth with May having a cuddle.
I think you
It
got it.
sounds weird, but I think I've just described exactly what happened in the film.
Everything you say is truth. All right, so they're running now. I want to insert the word tension into our upcoming discussion because he's being chased.
Yes.
So we as directors and story builders and whatever, we want to start building up the tension. So he's being chased up and down and left and right. And then he ends up in a little alcove hiding in a building.
Yeah.
And what happens next?
There's a bunch of creepy people moving towards him at really slow pace.
The apathetics.
He stirs
Yeah.
the apathetics.
It's like every time he turns around, they're about half an inch closer to him, and so he ignores them again and looks to the people.
And they're
with
somehow drawn
pitchforks,
to him. And
And
then
they're a
one
little
of them,
closer again. And one touches him,
yeah, and
Takes
then
a bead of
licks
sweat.
their finger.
and then they pass the sweat on, and then they pass it.
And it's the best case of
Yeah.
Jimmy germs I've ever seen.
And so tension gone, no tension anymore. And then Consuela turns up.
No, wait. They start snogging each other,
They're sharing his life juice.
and then they start snogging him,
Ah, yes.
and he starts
Yes.
snogging them.
That's where he slipped back into James Bond really quickly, didn't he?
And then he starts weakening.
And that's when I thought,
It's like they are absorbing
yeah,
his life juices.
Yeah.
And then he has to eat his leaf
That's right.
to recover.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
And the,
And
the
that's when I
person that
thought the
gave him
film
the
was
leaf
gonna
said,
Paying
"You will
attention to
know
this bit, I thought,
when."
Oh, it's going to turn into a bit of an orgy.
Yeah.
So paying a bit more attention there.
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, no, it's not really. It's kind of,
So the girl he left wrapped in the plastic knew that was going to happen, because when she gave him the leaf, she said, "You'll know when you need to use this."
It would have been good if she had have said that this is the leaf of
Yeah.
life boosting superpower
Yeah.
or something, rather than this is just a handy leaf to eat when you need it.
Or even said, "I've seen it in a vision or something," instead of "Take this leaf."
I think in the greater context of this movie, that's a very small point.
yeah, that's like
The leaf.
that's like worrying about the calorie arrangement on the Titanic, really.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
All right, so they're sucking the life juices out of him. Man, I was just thinking about this movie from the point of view of tension, that he's being chased by people and there's great danger,
Yeah.
and then he's snogging
Yeah.
people and
That's-
falling asleep.
James Bond. That's what it is.
Yeah, but tension requires things to be in a certain order, and this film's not very good at putting things
Yeah.
in a specific
I was
order.
thinking like Die Hard. Imagine Die Hard when he's at the top of Nakatomi building and he's shooting the Germans and he's running the glass and they're smashing everywhere, and there's a whoosh comes to the exploding blinding grenade thing, and he dives into a room and there's a chick in there and she says, "You want to have a kiss?" And he says, "Yeah, all right." That doesn't happen in Die Hard.
No, you're right. It's effectively letting all the air out of the balloon.
Okay.
So, but anyway, she picks the tension back up by thundering into that room where they're all snogging on horseback, with having set fire to the rest of the village for some reason. Like, it wasn't his village,
Yeah, yeah.
right? It was their village, and they set fire.
I'm angry and upset, and I'm going to set.
It's
Yeah.
like The Simpsons or something or other. The Simpsons would do that.
And he takes off again. So the game is afoot once more.
And he kind of hides in the forest, and then suddenly it's night. All right.
Doesn't he go back up to the edge to communicate with his mates again?
Yeah, he does.
think he
actually.
does.
He might have done
Then he
more.
rolls down
Which
a mountain.
makes no real sense anyway.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So then what happens is it's nighttime, and every chaos and pandemonium. Some of the apathetics have now got a spark of life, and they're snogging and doing all sorts of crazy things. And all of the old farts are going around and being a bit crazy. And then something very now. Using the word strange is, of course, it's just the word.
It's lost all its meaning
It's
at this
all
point.
used up.
Yeah.
But something happens. Something happens here. And he says to the old farts, particularly discount Eric Idle, that he needs them to take him to the other Eternals. He wants to have a meeting with them.
Yeah.
And how is that achieved?
Well, first he says to the old farts, "Take me to friend."
The friend.
So they dress him up as a bride,
yes. I
which
remember
apparently
that.
Sean Connery was not very happy with. Out of all the stuff they got him to do in this film, that was the one thing he really put the foot down and said, "I don't think I'm going to do that."
Why didn't they just
He
hide
does
him
it.
in a sack or something?
Could put him in anything, but put him in a lacy bride outfit with a veil and everything, and not that there was an abundance of brides, so he would have stuck out in the crowd. But they take him to friend.
I want to give you my Die Hard 2.0. Let's imagine that Bruce Willis has just slid into that room and there's a chick in there. He starts snogging with that chick. And then he says, "I've got to go and find my wife. I've got to go and find my wife." And she says, "But there's loads of Germans out there. And he says, "All right, I'm going to need a disguise." So Bruce Willis puts on a wig and some fake lipstick and a mini skirt and fake boobs, and then he goes out of the doorway and he looks up and down the hot corridor, and then he tiptoes down the corridor, and then he goes into a lift and he looks and he looks and he goes down the lift and he comes open, the lift ding opens and he looks and nobody's there, and then he sees his wife and he goes in to see his wife and he sits down and he says, "Oh, hi honey." What point was there of him getting dressed up in drag?
Yeah.
That's exactly what happens in
Absolutely.
this movie. They get him dressed up in drag
Absolutely.
for no reason at all. You should at least have the bad guys turn up and say, "Who's that?" And he says, "Oh, it's just me, an
When
old
they
bride."
unveil him, he's surrounded by the people he's supposed to be hiding from. Like they're just walking past, like he's invisible or something.
So they don't make anything of it.
No.
So do you think they were just malicious one day? They think, "Do you think we can get Sean Connery in a dress? He's in Budgie Smugglers right now."
Could be.
Or maybe he was so pissed off they were afraid to look at him.
All right. So everything's going crazy, and then we're going to go into the tabernacle destruction, right? So the tabernacle's like the Matrix. We slowly find out that it's like the internet, or
Yeah, there's something interesting. I mean, to the film's credit, they talk about it being a computer made out of light, which is a pretty interesting idea. And there was some talk about making computers out of light to sort of get around the problems of transistor heat.
Yeah, I thought that there was some pretty
interesting idea.
futuristic
Yeah.
concepts thrown around in that film about storage, memory storage, and
Sean Connery's character said he just says something about lasers and frequencies and stuff when he's describing how the tabernacle works, how it's probably inside a crystal. Oh.
So, what about when you see the thing that is important in the crystal, or later on it becomes the ball, you will know what you have to do, or you'll know what it's all about. Remember?
Yeah.
it's another weird.
Did you make any sense of that?
No, it's another
me
weird
neither.
thing where they have a crystal that's something to do with the tabernacle. And then he goes off and he meets Arthur Dishcloth again,
Yeah.
who gives him a crystal ball
Yep.
that's also something to do with the tabernacle, and both of them are something, and they're different and they're the same, and they're both helpful, and there's
Yeah.
two things and they're the same thing, and why don't you just have one thing?
Yeah.
And then he works it all out.
Yeah.
So that's my best explanation of it.
What you need to find is in the thing, and I never worked out what
that's
they were talking about.
because it has all those various surfaces, which means the light is reflected over and over and over and over and over again.
And so,
And I did figure out why that was important somehow, but I've forgotten.
was Arthur never dead?
No, he was killed.
So when they're reborn, they go to the age they were when they died.
Apparently.
I guess so.
I don't know how.
Because I
Conan
got a
works,
feeling, didn't he say something like, "I've been pulling the strings the whole time. Everything has
Yeah,
happened because I've made it happen."
Yeah, but
Or
I think
was he
that's-
I think he
referring
did.
to
I think he did.
what he was doing out in the wasteland?
Yeah.
All right, so part of what they've said to Zed is that you have to look into the crystal, and the crystal will look into you, and all of this sort of stuff.
And
So
then he ends up in the crystal.
Yeah,
Right.
I didn't understand that bit.
Yeah.
How does
No.
he get into that little tiny crystal?
Yeah.
It's 'cause he's tiny.
Exactly. He's a big guy. It's a very small rock.
very small crystal.
Yeah.
I can't assume it must have been some sort of. He didn't literally go into it. He psychically went into it.
His
Yeah.
mind went into it.
Yeah.
Because what does he do inside the crystal?
Runs around in a circle a lot.
He runs around in a circle a lot, and there's loads of mirrors in the crystal.
Lots of mirrors. It looked like Enter the Dragon,
I know. Yes.
And
Did
then,
it?
and,
or the James Bond with the Scaramanga.
yeah.
and then he fires into a reflection of himself,
That's right.
Right.
which bleeds,
That's right.
which he's killing off
Himself.
the
Somehow.
tabernacle's version of him.
Uh-huh.
The version.
And he finds the weakness. He finds the way out.
Yes, and that essentially kills the tabernacle.
Yeah.
Tabernacle helpfully says, we've found our weakness and you've destroyed us.
Yeah.
Okay, so that apparently would switch off everything. From
Everything turns off the magic gate, the magic shield. Therefore, the
loonies run in.
Loonies come streaming in with their guns and their red undies.
And they kill everybody. And
Well, there was a little bit before that where he turns back time.
Yes,
That's right.
they put everything in this movie, didn't they? Psychic powers and turn back time and prophecy of the future and the chosen one.
And also, there's this little bit where Charlotte Rampling's character, Consuela, she comes up behind him with a knife.
That's right.
And he's just sitting there reading, and he presumably knows she's there because he's superhuman. And she's like,
Yeah.
And he even says, "You can't do it, can you?"
She said, "You're the only one who showed kindness to me," or something.
There was another part in it as well.
Yeah, and she never did.
They gave all their powers to Zed as well.
That's right.
You know, another bit. There's a light, flashy sequence.
Because there's one sequence there where he says, "Get into my aura and walk inside my aura and you will be safe." So they all jump in behind him and he can walk through.
Back time.
Yeah.
And he can turn back time.
That's right. People,
Find a way.
everything goes in reverse.
So, everybody dies, except he gives the crystal to some of the people, some of the immortals on the horse, and they live with it.
Because they've decided, because they're the good ones that have...
That's May and her mates.
And they realised, and they're going to go off and now live their natural lives and actually be more useful than these parasites who just live in this enclave or whatever, vortex. And that way they don't lose all their knowledge and history because it's still in the thingamabobby. And so they will go off and start a new
colony
amongst all the unwashed.
I don't really understand why Zed and Consuela didn't go with them and why they decided to set up house inside the old Zardoz head.
Yeah.
There should be a lot of future with that.
Yeah.
And
so Zed
he just sat on a rock.
Yeah, they kind of get married.
They shagged.
Yep.
She had a baby.
Yep.
And then they sat on a rock for 20 years.
Until they turned into skeletons.
This is Beethoven.
Isn't
now,
that
presumably one of them died before the other and proceeded to continue holding on to that person while they decayed to a skeleton.
Exactly, that is suburban life.
And then
you sit on a
roll
rock
credits.
for 20 years and die.
And then literally, roll credits.
Roll credits.
Okay,
The
fuck
end.
it, we're done.
That's it.
Wow. I think most of these movies, they kind of have that trouble with the ending. It's like, okay, we killed the bad guy.
Yep.
What now? It's like,
I'm thinking when I saw it, so what's happened to all these dudes with the guns?
Exactly.
Because they're going to find them.
Yep. And they were looking for him.
They're not hiding very
They
well.
were calling his name out. They were there to find him.
What are they living on?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are they living on, raising this kid? They've got to come out of the cave occasionally.
All that grain.
Yeah.
And those potatoes.
Yeah.
So yeah, they kind of never, and I think that's a bit of a trope for these type of movies, is they don't ever end it well. I mean, they just stop doing it and go home.
I suppose that montage of them sitting on the rock was supposed to show them over the years.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
We're assuming they lived the life and probably farmed outside.
Did something
I thought
else.
there was one little moment there that was pretty cool where the kid grows up and then he stands up and goes to walk away and she puts her hand out to grab him and he just sort of walks off and then Sean Connery grabs the hand and then they hold hands and go and grow old together.
And I think that was to symbolise, her,
it
him leaving the nest, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah.
Yeah.
There were plenty of those cool moments, and you could see those little gems all the way through.
Yeah.
And you could see that there was a story there. There was a book there. Just the way that they tried to connect all of those things together was just... That was the problem.
Incredibly badly paced. I mean,
Yeah,
the sections of the film...
plotted.
Like, the blindness bit, which didn't need to be there at all.
Mm.
And there's other bits of the film which really needed more explanation, which didn't have that explanation. I spent a long time talking about penises and a long time, And the other thing that struck me about the film is actually it's quite violent in places. There's a rape sequence and there's people being shot for no reason at all. There's plenty of blood in it, and also, but the same all this hippie shit as well.
It actually reminded me a lot of sort of 70s, early 80s avant-garde theatre that I got exposed to in my studies, actually.
Yeah.
That's what it reminded me a lot of.
Yeah, it definitely tends to.
Yeah, all right. So, I don't know. Wrap up with our final opinions.
Yeah, it had a 1.5 million budget.
Oh, yeah.
That would be in those
dollars.
In those days. It was written, directed, and produced by the same person.
And
I think
there's your problem.
that's your problem.
As soon as
no
Beck
checks and balances.
as soon as Beck saw that at the beginning of the film, because well, I can't say she watched it, but she was in the same room. She said, this is going to suck. The same guy's written it, directed it, and produced it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very true.
I can only give you admission numbers for how it did at the box office. It doesn't show me numbers. And for some weird, it's only admissions for France and Spain.
It was probably burnt in every other nation.
Bizarre. But I'll be the first to tell you, I've never heard of it. I hadn't.
I'd never heard of it.
I
Heard
saw it
of it
advertised.
until.
I actually remember seeing it advertised
Oh,
on
right.
BBC television. Zardoz. I remember seeing the heads on these people. I'd be 70. What was it?
74.
74.
So
And
I'd be
Tom
12. I
actually-
wasn't very old. And
Tom actually said he saw it when he was younger as well.
Yeah.
yeah. And then it came onto BBC television, and I watched it.
Some of the imagery was recognisable. I think the face was, but then again, I think it's fairly. It's not that uncommon a sort of a mask.
It actually reminds me of the Greek.
It's-
They actually have a name, but the mask.
Hector or something like that. There's a mask. I
Yeah,
know
that
the one
Greek
you're talking
drama.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they even use it in Life of Brian. I think at one point someone puts a mask on like that in one scene from Life of Brian. But no, I never heard of it growing up. Never heard of it
Same
until it appeared on our to watch list, and then when I saw the trailer, I didn't know what the fuck to make of it. Then when I got the film, I made the mistake of jogging through it.
Okay.
Zipping through a little bit and having a look, watch a minute,
Yeah, it makes
have a
even
look.
less sense.
And what it did is it stripped me of my want to watch the whole thing. And I found it incredibly difficult to put aside the time to watch it and only got to it last night. I just couldn't, something about it, I just couldn't do it. I think in a way, it's sort of, I was worried it was going to take away something because I grew up with Sean Connery being quite the hero. And he was 007. He was Indiana Jones's dad, you know. He always played really cool roles and stuff like that. And to see him running around in his red undies and
Wedding dress.
you know, and just the sort of film, I'd seen movies like that before. It reminded me of Tommy a little bit, you know, the rock opera Tommy.
Yeah.
There was sufficient weirdness that
Trippy.
that I knew that I was worried that was going to damage his reputation in my eyes, sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just couldn't bring myself to watch it. And having watched it, I'm glad that there's a cultural sort of, it's a cultural icon now that I'm glad that I can now reference. But I couldn't watch it again.
What does Sean Connery say about the film? I'd like to know what he thought.
I don't know, but he was struggling. In the notes, he was struggling to get work. He'd just walked away from James Bond, and I think the movie was You Only Live Twice, was his last James Bond movie, and he was struggling. He couldn't get work, and he went and did a couple of movies cheap. He was not only they only paid him $200,000 for it. He volunteered to drive himself to and from the set every day, so that they could afford extra things.
When did his career pick up again?
He went back to James Bond. He went away. Roger Moore did a James Bond movie, and then Sean Connery came back. A little bit too old to be
And then
James Bond.
Roger Moore went back again.
And then Roger Moore became the James Bond for another few films. And Connery went on to huge things after that. He was voted the sexiest man alive at 63 years
Yeah.
old. World's sexiest man alive.
I imagine that, you know how we were describing this as like a book? I imagine on paper this movie looks pretty good. You know, and when you see the script and you hear the director talk about the themes and the ideas, because the themes and the ideas are fairly solid, and it would have sounded pretty good, worth a chance, worth a gamble.
I think he could probably remake it.
You know, I think there was. If I can just say, I didn't hate this movie. You know, I wouldn't watch it again.
No.
But
you wouldn't burn it.
You know, I wouldn't burn it. No, it has some interesting things to say about philosophical comments about life and eternal life, what eternal life would be like, and you know, what human species amounts to, and also about how people can be manipulated and stuff. And you know,
And
it wasn't appallingly bad, and there was some actually quite decent bits in it along the way.
Yeah.
And it's certainly the story and the themes are consistent with 1970s science fiction.
I think it's a sign of the time.
It's
You know,
actually-
you're swinging out of the Vietnam War. You've got it's still alive,
it's
and still
yeah.
cracking at that point. But you're coming out of the 60s.
Yeah.
You've got a
It's
lot of
another film-
anti-heroes going on.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of the original Planet of the Apes as well. That same
Yeah.
sort of thing, you know, this nihilistic sort of. And have you ever seen Slaughterhouse-5, which is another one of these films from the era, sort of, and
We'll have to watch that.
Soylent Green. Soylent Green's another one of these.
Definitely Soylent Green,
and
yeah.
one of these sort of very, you know, low budget.
That's
sort
on
of
our
very-
list, actually.
It is, yeah.
very dark films, and they're all kind of that similar.
Mm,
they're not
mm.
Soylent Green, isn't it? Like as trippy as this.
I-
But, you know.
It's almost a rarer occurrence to have a film that is different to this type of film coming from that era.
Yeah.
Especially in sci-fi. There's a lot of experimentation going on,
Yeah.
not only behind the camera, but also in the tech. The cinematographer in this film, it famously in the documentaries that are made about this film, he opened up the angle of the lens so wide that let all the light rushing in, and then what he does is he puts a filter in the back of the camera that gives it this ethereal feel where there's so much saturation of light but desaturation of color, and so it gives us this ethereal feel. But the problem was that when you take the negative and try to reproduce it, a negative runs through the chemical, and when there's more light, there's less film left. You know what I
Okay,
mean?
yeah,
When it's a darker scene, there's less chemical that affects that frame.
Yep.
So much light is in the bloody frame that you can't reproduce it, and so the 20th Century Fox and all of the big studios said to all of the cinematographers, get it out of your head. You're not doing this anymore. Like, yes, it looks wonderful, but we can't distribute the friggin' film. We can't. They need to duplicate it and send it on. But yeah, the guy that did this was his format. It was his formula
Yeah, right.
of doing it, and so it had this feel to it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
The other
films
thing-
with
the other
that.
thing I think I probably use now like
of the
it's
time.
very British, isn't it? It's a very British.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
British cast.
Yeah.
Set in Ireland, which is pretty much Britain.
Yeah.
And it's a very British, sort of quintessentially British science fiction thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's
Absolutely. So,
and it's got Beethoven.
but and the musical score. I know I wasn't overly aware of the musical score
I wasn't
because I
either, to
think
be
I was a
honest,
little
yeah.
numbed.
Yeah.
They did
By the
actually
vision.
put on the credits what the music was and who it was played by. It was played by some symphony from
Philharmonic Orchestra or something.
from Amsterdam, I think.
Oh yeah, probably yeah. It's a good. No, it's great. Great piece of music.
So, out of our standard scoring system of would you buy, rent, or burn, Dan?
Well, as I said, my opinions went from I thought it was terrible through to all of the stuff we discussed where I started to appreciate it a lot more. And then I went back to realizing that I was right the first time, that it is terrible. And I knew why.
Yeah.
So I'm burn. Burn it.
You're going to burn it.
Burn it.
Rick?
Rent.
Rent it? Yeah.
Yep.
I'm
To
with
me,
you.
it's still better than that Banzai thing you made me watch.
Buckaroo Banzai. That wasn't me. Who was that? That was
Buckaroo
Tom.
Banzai.
Was it Tom or
Oh, it might have been me, actually.
Or it might have been Dan.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it wasn't. Like, it was way worse than anything we've ever watched. But at the same time, I'm glad I watched it.
It's far
I'm
more,
glad I watched it, but
It's
I'd
on,
be fine if it was burnt and
Yeah.
we.
It's on the arty end of the films we
Yeah.
watch.
Yeah.
I'd rent it.
Yeah. It's, you know, the Razzies.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Razzie Awards. It's one of the. I think it's in the top 10 of the most watchable bad movies. So the Razzies are sorted into shit movies that you can't watch, and then there's shit movies you can that are watchable. This is one of the more recognisable, watchable bad movies.
I'm looking at IMDb, and it's given a 5.8.
Yeah.
And I often really do agree with some of the numbers for the other movies, 6.4, and I'm like, yeah, 6.4, that's perfect, you know. But no, 5.8. No, it's not 5.8. It's 3.2.
It is. Because I got a feeling the Flash Gordon was only 6 or something. Like it was only marginally above that.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a rent. And Tony, you're
I'll play the video again.
a
Well,
rent.
look, I mean, I watched it last night, and I watched it all, and I didn't feel like it was like 2 hours of my life that I'd never get back. I thought, well, it's
Yeah.
missing that I quite like, really.
Yeah, and I think it shocked me then in that sense as well. I thought that I was going to hate it, and I didn't. There was enough there for me to get, and I
I'm
guess
probably the only person at this table who's seen it twice, actually.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and
That's probably why I'm making more sense of it, actually.
and that will always be
I watched
the
it
case.
3 times.
Oh, you watched it 3
Oh, you
times.
did too.
But I will confess, just so that you're not thinking that I'm too much of a weirdo, is the second and third time I watch at high speed.
Yeah.
And
That's the time when I take the
and-
things and write down the story.
and it's the sort of film. The more I think about it, the more I like it.
Well,
For instance, I came in and I was like, oh.
yeah.
But the more we've spoken about it, the more I appreciate artistically what they did with it.
When I say burn it, I can appreciate exactly all of that, but I still, at the end of it, the little sheen ping that I stick on the top is that it's just put together so badly and it's so badly organised
Yeah.
that's the thing that annoys me about it.
Yeah.
Missed
Well-
opportunity, perhaps, but
We might be similar, Rick. There's enough in there to find inspiration. Like there's some stuff in there that could pop into your mind when it comes time to coming up with ideas for story and narrative and whatever. And therefore, it's I've made a connection to it in that
Yeah.
way because
I'm glad
I saw some things
watched
there
it.
that I'd never seen presented that way before.
But I wouldn't rush out to see it again.
No,
yes.
no. But I'd love to see someone remake it.
No.
No, I'd love to see someone take the story and make a new
Yeah.
film out of it. I guess that's
No.
no.
But it would be interesting to see somebody do it well, do the story well.
Yeah.
Actually, there was just a scene there that I just cracked up. That mirror pyramid.
Yes, when they go down in it,
Yeah, and he does that.
just get like that.
It's very pantomime.
Yeah, and you can tell the director's going, okay, so what we're going to do is you're just going to have to just duck down behind the pyramid.
And he's like,
Sean Connery's 6'4".
yeah, to watch my motivation. Is it a lift or some sort of teleporter thing?
Don't ask stupid questions, Sean. All right, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us once again. We've had I knew we were going to have a lot of fun talking about it.
Yeah.
Rick, anything exciting? Very, very happy to hear that the game that you were part of has been released.
Yes.
Remind our 3-9 subscribers.
Yonder, the Cloudcatcher Chronicles,
That's right. Next show we'll pull it up at the start of the show and,
cool.
and show some
out on
images.
PlayStation 4 and Steam. Buy
Yes, yes,
Buy it.
and not being hated. You know,
it-
it's been well received.
Yeah, it's been well received. It does have a bit of a hate train, because I think these days, as soon as you reach a certain level of popularity, you automatically have a hate train.
Uh-huh.
So I think the game's become big enough to actually have its own hate train because it doesn't have combat and things like that. And that's
Awesome. So we'll have a look at some imagery and maybe even some animation cutscenes, things like that next time around. Tony, anything exciting coming up? Am I right in thinking that you're going to embark on some long distance running?
I'm actually presenting at the Australia. This is completely different. In the Australia Computer Science conference, which is happening a week on Monday and Tuesday. I'm presenting a session on
Fantastic.
the Monday on AI in games and what we teach at the AIE.
Fantastic.
And on the Tuesday, I'm running 2 workshops for teachers, teaching them about AI
That would
in
be
games.
Tuesday the
Yeah, it's not next Tuesday; it's the following Tuesday.
15th. Does that sound right? Tuesday the 15th of August. And where's that again?
It's at is there a conference centre in Canberra?
Oh, it's not part of the National Science.
Yeah, it probably is. Part
Is
of
it?
That,
Yeah.
That's
It's part of-
awesome.
Part of that.
That's
I
awesome.
got talked into doing it.
Part of that.
I'm quite. I mean, I've done a few presentations, but this is a bit stepping well outside my comfort zone because I'm not presenting to industry people. I'm presenting to other people. So
Awesome.
I'll see how that goes.
The National Science, it's National Science Week sort of thing.
Yes, yeah.
They've also got an interesting event as part of their program as well, where you can go and watch. What's the event? Horizon
Interstellar.
Interstellar. You can go and watch Interstellar, and then after the film, sit around and talk with scientists and the people that did the visual effects for it,
Oh, that's cool.
because the visual effects were driven by scientists.
Yeah.
At,
Oh,
at
cool.
Digital
When?
Domain.
when and where's that?
That's on the 14th, I think.
Yeah, it's down in.
Yeah.
Was it at the Palace Cinema?
Yeah, and I think
Oh,
the
cool.
following night they're going to do another movie. Can't remember. Yeah, but the program looks pretty good. So that's the Australian National Science Week. Very good. Thanks for joining us, one and all. Until next time, bye from me.
Penis is good. Guns are bad.
Yeah.